thank you so much, Sheriff Thaddeus Cleveland. I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly.
Perfect. Perfect.
Thank you. I have been so excited to talk with you. You know, you're a sheriff of a Terrell County, right? And you
Yes, ma'am.
were a border patrol agent for over 26 years.
Yes, ma'am.
And, you know, your views are extremely important. And we are so excited to speak with you. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you. And
Uh,
I enjoy talking to anybody and everybody to give an honest and factual picture
mhm.
about what's going on. Um, Even my role as sheriff, I hate the fact that I have to run as a Republican or Democrat because I'm an American.
Yeah.
And both sides bring good and both sides bring bad. This is a solvable solution. What's happening at our border? It's just that it's so political that they won't work together to come up with a solution. And as I sent you last night, and I think I had a typo on what I sent you, I just went back and emailed all my media points of contact as well as the congressional members I communicate with because I put it was acceptable, but everything after that was why it was unacceptable. But last night they released some of the Senate's bill that they're looking at, completely unacceptable.
Completely unacceptable. Okay, thank you. Is it okay if I like start with some questions and
But
you will sort of, you know, feel free, of course, to tell me you don't like something or you don't
nope,
want to answer or
nope.
whatever.
I'll be completely honest with you.
Okay, thank you so much. So, you know, I have watched some of your interviews. They are very interesting. And in one of them, you were saying that the U.S. Mexico border has been, you know, point of an issue for a very long time, that even in the past it was a crossing point for Indians, for nomads, and there was this illegal business already back then. Would you mind like telling your opinion why this Mexico US border has been such a huge issue? And also you went through 5 administration. I wonder how has this been changing throughout the time and what you have experienced.
Yes, ma'am. And just the history of North America from those natives that were in the areas to Spaniards coming and conquering parts of Mexico, and then Americans, or I shouldn't say Americans, we were Europeans
Mhm.
coming to north to what's now the United States, and and claiming parts of it. And as those worlds all met, in Texas along the what's now the Texas Mexico border, and the Americans claiming Texas and having the Treaty of Hidalgo where we actually, got part of Texas. And then, just all that's gone on with the history of this area has always been one of interest to me and a very important part of American history. But with that being said, I am a native Texan. I was born in Texas. I was raised here in Terrell County, which is the 10th largest county in the state of Texas, and we have 54 miles of river with Mexico.
Mhm.
There is a border patrol station here as well, and of course, as you know, our border patrol agents, they're the ones that are charged with securing our border. They're the ones that are in between the ports of entry. So our
Mhm.
ports of entry are what you have in our big urban areas, El Paso, Laredo, McAllen, out to San Diego, Nogales, Arizona. So various parts along the U.S. Mexico border. But I spent the last 11 of my 26 years here in my hometown as the
Mhm.
patrol agent in charge. I would still be a border patrol agent, but unfortunately, our
Mhm.
sheriff passed away.
I,
And
I,
at
I
that time, I had enough time to retire. So I went ahead and retired to take over as our sheriff to take care of my community in a different manner and still being able to support our United States Border Patrol agents. And to be honest, I can probably support them more from here than I could as the leader of the station when I was a Border Patrol agent.
Mhm.
But to get to your second portion of the question, as far as working under 5 different administrations, I did, starting with President Clinton, working through President Bush, through President Obama, through President Trump, and then about the first year and a few months of President Biden. And I'll tell you what the difference is those first 4 administrations I mentioned, um, Clinton, Bush, Obama, Trump, they all progressed border security. They all built border wall. This current administration, there's currently no policy along our border. Right now, the policy is you come to America, we'll let you in, and we won't ask you any questions unless you're from Mexico. If you're from Mexico, we're going to send you back to Mexico. And to be honest, if there was someone we'd rather have here, and that sounds bad, and I don't mean it in a bad way, but you know, our neighbors to the south historically have come to work as laborers here illegally, and our economy here in the United States relies heavily on that illegal labor. That's who does jobs Americans don't want to do, working in hotel cleaning industry, building homes and construction, poultry plants where they process chickens, beef packing plants where they process beef, and then picking fruits and vegetables in various parts of the country as well. That has always been relied upon by our neighbors to the south. But right now we're keeping them in Mexico, but we're letting everybody else in. But it is a solvable problem. And it starts with the president of the United States sending a message to the world saying you're not going to come to our borders and enter illegally, or you're not going to come claim asylum. Because as I'm sure you understand asylum laws, you're supposed to claim asylum in the first safe country you encounter. And people are traveling through different continents, through different countries to get to the United States to claim asylum. We are still the greatest country in the world. And the reason we are still the greatest country in the world is because we are a country ruled by law. We still believe in rule of law. And by that, when you come to this country and you say you want to see a judge because you think you have the right to be here, then we give you that opportunity. Vast majority won't have that ability, but they still get that opportunity. So I know I said a whole lot. If you want me to let anything else out, by all means, ask me to be more specific, and we'll be happy to answer.
I love your answers. You know, it's of course it's such a complex topic, and you are there on the ground, and it's enlightening to actually hear it from firsthand what's happening. So I'm happy for every word you are saying. If I can just circle a little bit back, you said that maybe the current administration did the least. What do you think of former President Donald Trump? Because, of course, he's the hot candidate again.
Right.
Were you happier with his policies, or how would you evaluate his stance towards this?
For border security, most definitely. And I'll tell you why. So when under President Trump, we started having a lot of those caravans saying we're going to come to the United States. And I think they were doing that because he ran on the border so heavily. You know, he said he was going to build a wall. He was going to make Mexico pay for it. So I think that aggravated and made people want to come up here. Well, what he did to counter that was created the policy that what's called the Migrant Protection Protocols, MPP, or also known as Remain in Mexico. So he had those people, if you're going to claim asylum in our country, okay, we'll let you claim asylum, but you're going to wait in Mexico until you have your hearing. Unlike what we're doing now, we're saying, okay, come in, here's a piece of paper. It tells you when to report for your hearing date and come back later. Those dates, the last ones I saw, and they're probably even later now, but those dates were for 2031. That's 7 years.
Jesus Christ.
So
no way.
Most people never show up. And even if they do, 7 years from now, they're going to have kids, which is fine, but they're going to have jobs. Nobody's going to make them go back to their home country. And again, we need labor, we need workforce, but we need to do it in an orderly fashion. We need to make sure we know who's coming into our country. But I'm getting ahead of myself because I want to go back to President Trump. So he also held Mexico's feet to the fire. He told Mexico, if you don't start helping us at our borders, which they had never done before, he said, I'm going to start increasing tariffs on your goods coming into America. And that got Mexico's attention because they rely on America so much for their trade, right? So that got their attention. They started patrolling the northern border with the United States, which they had never done before. And they started patrolling their southern border with Guatemala. But I'll also tell you, each presidential administration that comes in, rather than following the law in the books, they create policies to kind of, to control the parts they want. If we would just actually enforce the laws on the book, everything would be okay. It's not that our system's broken. You'll hear people say our system's broken. It's not broken. DC, Washington, DC is what's broken.
Very interesting. Thank you for that.
But also I want to add, all four of those administrations I mentioned, Clinton to Bush, to Obama to Trump, even President Obama and Vice President Biden, they all built border wall, all of them. So when he was vice president, he built it. When he became president, that's when he didn't want to have to build it. And the only small portion that he's built is because he had to by law.
I just wonder, you mentioned that they get the appointments for 2031, right? If I'm not mistaken. Why is it such a long time? Is it there's overflow or?
Exactly. It's backlogged. That's what we call it. There's just so many people wanting to have these hearings, and there's only so many judges, so they have to schedule them, and that's how far out we're scheduled. It's probably even beyond that by now.
Well, I can tell you, I'm now in New York, and I can't even renew my legal documents for New York City because we don't have that many like you have probably down there. There's what's publicly available is 200,000 is the estimate right now. It might be probably much more, but because they can get the ID New York City card without any visa, they just need a passport and utility bill. So even New Yorkers cannot renew their own documents because there's just overflow and the legal system doesn't have enough people.
And that's a great point, because I know other people that are waiting for spouses to be able to come over, or waiting for job people in, not necessarily in this area, but other areas. But because of everything else going on, it delays their process. So, but please don't tell me that you're a visa overstay.
Oh, no. This is probably one of the reasons why I find it so interesting, because I'm a legal resident. I'm a permanent resident. I'm applying for citizenship, and of course, I feel what people are going through. At the same time, it took me a lot of time, money, and documents to sort of do everything legally. And funny was, when I was traveling from Europe, they asked me for my green card like 5 times, but I was telling them, look, these people just cross over without anything, over the border, and you are asking me like the 5th time to show you still in Europe my legal documents. But anyways, just out of.
And hearing you say that, so the process. And that's why you see people from Mexico and Central America sneak across, because they can't afford to go through a legal process like that. Now, that's the portion. So when I speak about, what's going on right now, we got to focus on border security before immigration. We have to secure our border, because if you start talking about amnesty and you start talking about other, political reliefs, that makes more people want to come, because they think they'll get here and then they'll be given citizenship automatically. But you understand what it's like to have to go through that whole process, have to show that you have money, that you have a residence. That's why so many can't, because there's not a way for them to they just don't have what it takes to come over here legally, so they come over illegally.
Yeah, that makes, it's not correct, but it makes sense as you just explained it. If I can now turn to Customs and Border Protection numbers, they released new numbers past like week, 2 weeks, and it's showing a drop of like 70-80% on the Texan border. I know you also noted that on your social media websites, that you are seeing some difference. Does it really correspond to these like 70-80% drops as they are mentioning?
Yes, for sure. I was just down in Eagle Pass, and I've got friends down there that's still Border Patrol agents, and they have seen a significant decrease. And I've talked to other people, Rodney Scott, who's a retired chief patrol agent, some congressional people. We all talk, and even here, our numbers aren't as high as they were historically. And some thought behind it is because now that it's an election year, and President Biden has sent some people to Mexico to work with the government of Mexico, that we will see a turn in numbers go down, so people get confidence again, and then so he can hope for more votes to remain in office, and then just do this whole thing again. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, or maybe people are just more afraid to cross now, because Texas is doing more, and exactly. we are seeing more of an increase out in Arizona and California as well.
Yeah.
But when speaking about numbers, and I probably didn't see them in my social media, I don't know that I posted this specific facts, but I speak to it a lot. So historically, where I'm at, the Border Patrol station that I commanded, we're the busiest station between Del Rio, Texas to El Paso, Texas. And that's about 600 miles between the two cities. And we were typically historically the busiest station with about 1,000 apprehensions a year. That's a very small number compared to everywhere else, but it's because we don't have infrastructure south of us or north of us to facilitate a large flow of people. However, when this administration took over, the first year, our numbers jumped to 289% increase compared to the last year of Trump. The second year he was in office, it was 418% increase compared to that first year with President Trump. So it went from about 12 to 1,300 apprehensions in 2020 to 5,500 in 2021. 2022 was about 7,400 apprehensions. And then last year, 2023, we did see a downturn in numbers. Some of that had to do with Title 42. Some of that had to do with me taking over as sheriff, not just me, but our office getting more engaged. We took over 111 vehicles off the highway, smuggling people last fiscal year. Just 2 to 3 of us. With the state's help, we had over 200 vehicles we took off the road. So that definitely made an impact. And we've seen that shift in smuggling in the neighboring county where they're not as engaged. They don't have a sheriff there that's willing to get out like I'm willing to get out. And it so happens that he's also a Democrat. But then you get on the next county over, you have another sheriff. It's called Kinney County. They've been in the media a lot. It's Sheriff Brad Coe, and he was also a prior Border Patrol agent. So he and I, we're out there. We don't have crime in our communities. My community, we don't have crime. We have a border security problem. So,
thank you. So,
but with that, I also want to mention, and I hope I don't answer a question you have later, but historically, we have had about 1 death a year that we're able to locate. We get many more calls, but it's very hard to go out and find a lot of times remains. But historically, about 1 a year. This last 3 years, since this administration took over, we've had a total of 37.
Jeez.
Going from 1 a year to 37 in 3 years. So a tremendous increase.
Yeah,
and it's equal to what's happening across the rest of the border.
That's a disaster. It's very sad.
Because it doesn't matter if someone's here legally, illegally, if they're good or bad. I don't want to see anybody die.
Of course. It's very sad. And I sometimes wonder, like, why I see, women with their kids doing this journey, actually, like what's in their head. And sometimes I even question what's represented in their own countries, that it supports them in that way, that they do this dangerous journey with kids, because as you just mentioned, they are probably the weaker, small, loved ones, and they don't have the energy to such journeys. So I can only imagine that it's terrible.
And you're very right. And being a Border Patrol agent, great work that goes on. We save more people out there than you can even imagine. Even here, we get more 911 calls for illegals that are ready to give up or that are in distress than we do from our own citizens. But if you've got a heart, and what we see daily, it'll pull on your heartstrings. It's sad. We're humans too. We have families, we have kids. And when you go out and see this every day, it does wear on you.
Yeah, but to that point, you mentioned that this drop in the numbers is a combination of the Texan policies, maybe tougher stance, and the Biden-Mexico cooperation.
For sure.
And do you think this will last, or will it just mainly move to Arizona and California from now on?
I think we'll continue to see that increase over in those areas. And again, we may not see those substantial numbers like we did here in Texas. That remains to be seen. But I can tell you, Texas is going to continue to do all they can do to protect its citizens and the rest of America.
Yeah, so it remains to be seen if Arizona and California, if they put any measures as well, since they will be now probably the ones overflowed with illegal crossings. And do you think then, should we, some kind of, if you made some projections, do you think the major turn can come with a new president, assuming that it will not be Joe Biden?
Yes, definitely. I think I foresee President Trump getting the nomination, but for some reason, if he doesn't, I think regardless, whoever the nomination is going to be for the Republican Party, we will see changes at our border. And again, it gets back to securing our border. You know, you've heard the president say he's not getting the legislation he needs. He needs more money. That couldn't be further from the truth. He can do it with the stroke of a pen by saying, and again, announcing to the world, and then backing it up with a policy that doesn't allow asylum seekers just to come in freely. Either we incarcerate them here or we keep them in Mexico until they have their hearing.
Yeah, in one of your interviews, you mentioned that you would prefer to see more policies over spending money requests, right?
For sure. And I'll tell you, you know, we can always use more technology. We can always use more infrastructure. We can always use more Border Patrol agents. But to fix the problem that's right now, it's not because of lack of that. It's because of the lack of policy. But I can tell you when this does go away, what I'm going to continue to deal with, because I don't deal with those asylum seekers. I deal with people trying to come into America, trying to hide. Trying to come in. I'm sorry, I had a little banner come across. That didn't come across?
No, that happens to me all the time.
So I'll get back to my question. So what we deal with here are people that are trying to enter undetected. And then once you encounter them, they try to run, they abscond. And then if you encounter them on the highway, the smugglers in a vehicle, they lead you on a high-speed pursuit. So we're going to continue to be dealing with what we deal with, hopefully just at a lesser amount than what we've dealt with the past few years.
And what policies do you think would be most effective? What would you like to see implemented? And how do you separate the question? How do you view Title 8 versus Title 42?
Okay, so first of all, the policy that we need back is just the migrant protection protocols, which is to remain in Mexico for asylum seekers. You wait in Mexico until you see your or until you have your asylum hearing, or we keep them incarcerated here in the United States. Title 8 is our natural authority. That's what gives us authority along the border. That's the authority that we've always had, the Immigration and Nationality Act, where we derive our authorities. So Title 42 isn't a natural authority we have. That was given to us under President Trump as under Health and Human Services for the protection of COVID, to protect our Border Patrol agents and to protect our communities. It wasn't meant to be there forever. It was starting to be used as an immigration tool. I had been saying months before that it was time to get rid of Title 42 and go back to Title 8, because Title 8 brought forth a consequence. Even politicians didn't understand. They were saying, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Title 42 is going away. And I'm like, it needs to go away. But Title 8, I'll tell you what else happened is even when we had our Title 8 authorities, when President Biden came into office, he also slashed funding for ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. So when we catch people, if it's not an unaccompanied juvenile, kids that come that are unaccompanied with a family member, they get sent to Health and Human Services. Everybody else who isn't from Mexico, they'll go to Immigration and Customs Enforcement to be repatriated back to the country. But when there's not enough bed space, because the president says, okay, all those contracts we have with private jails, we're not funding them anymore. So that reduced the number of bed space. So when more people come, we're releasing more people. The more you catch, the more you release, because there's not enough bed space. So that's why Title 8 wasn't effective. But Title 8 gives us the consequence that we can prosecute somebody. And when you start having those prosecutions, those act as a deterrent, because nobody wants to go spend more time in jail.
Thank you, Sheriff. Now, we already a little bit spoke about it, but I wonder about your personal sort of experience. Like, what is the worst and the best you have seen so far on the border when you meet these illegal immigrants?
And first of all, I treat them all with respect, meaning they're humans too. I tell everybody that. We're blessed to be born in this country. Had I been born anywhere else, I would probably be coming here as well. So when I catch people, I talk to them. I find out where they're from. I find out how they crossed. Even when I'm traveling around the United States, because once you've been in a Border Patrol agent that long, you know what an illegal alien looks like. They don't look like Americans, meaning not necessarily physically, but also the way they dress. They don't dress like Americans. And anyway, so I talk to them, find out where they're from, because I'm curious. How did you travel here? What was it like? What's it like where you're from? So helping people. We pick up people all the time that haven't eaten in days, if not a week.
Jeez.
Giving them food, helping them out. It's a blessing. I mean, it really is. Yes, I'm out there to protect our country, protect our borders. A lot of times on my interview, I say I haven't had this much fun since I was a brand new Border Patrol agent. And my kids go, Dad, don't you feel bad about saying that? And what's fun is catching the smugglers, those that are trying to prey on their own people. But the death is the worst. Again, we've had 37 deaths, 25 since I've been sheriff. But even some of those 12 that year before I took over, I helped put in body bags from all ages. The youngest is 15 years old, a 15-year-old boy, to some elderly at all sorts, all different decomposition rates. Some that had just died hours before we got there, to some that had died months before we got there. So again, like I mentioned earlier, any death is not what we want at all, good or bad person, legal or illegal, American citizen. It doesn't matter. Any human death is not fun.
Thank you, sir. I have about 4 more questions. Do you still have time for that?
Oh, I do. You're good.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. So now you already touched upon it a little bit. I guess I will move more to security now. We have about 11.4 undocumented people now in the United States. That's the estimate, right? I suppose the numbers are probably higher. Right. What do you think it means for the future of the United States?
So right now you're hearing that we're going to see the biggest mass deportations ever. It's not going to happen. Excuse me. Now that a lot of these people are here, a lot of them are going to be able to stay because a lot of them aren't ever going to show back up. And then some of those that do show back up years down the road are going to have kids. And if someone's had a kid, how are our laws? We're not going to deport them because they're going to have kids that are American citizens, and we're a country that's still of compassion, to be honest with you. So a lot of them are here to stay. And again, it doesn't mean that they're all bad. The people I catch along the border, the vast majority are good people like you or me. They're looking to better their lives. Yes, they've done it illegally. Yes, we need to correct that. But we also do catch that criminal element, those that do have criminal records, those that have been charged with sex crimes and convicted with sex crimes, or with murders, or with drinking and driving. And we see every crime out there. If you've been arrested in the United States, we're going to have a record of it. So we see the good and the bad.
And you already, again, spoke about it, but one of the dangers resulting from illegal immigration is, of course, the fentanyl crisis as well. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I read that in 2023 alone, the amount skyrocketed to about 30,000 pounds, which is like 500% increase from the previous year. As some, of the potential immigrants can be drug smugglers, can you please talk about this? What's your experience, and have you recently catched any?
So a great question, and I've had the opportunity to speak with at many events with many fentanyl families, people that lost children to fentanyl, and I'll tell you, fentanyl is a bad thing. It's dangerous. When you look at people that have been poisoned by fentanyl, some of them, they look like me and you, or their kids look like my kids. It's not what people have typically said that it's an OD, someone that looks like they're a drug user. This can affect anybody, and it doesn't even have to be someone that's taking drugs. It's just something that's really bad. And I've had the opportunity to team up with families and to speak at events. We're fortunate here. We haven't had any seizures. We haven't even had a marijuana seizure here in about 5 years. And I can look anybody in the eye and say that it's not crossing here, because if our Border Patrol agents aren't seeing it, if we're not seeing it, our landowners aren't seeing it. And most importantly, if our sources of information, people that tell us in Mexico what's going on, if they're not seeing it or telling us about it, it's not coming. The reason we don't see as much marijuana now is because we grow so much in America now. It's been legalized in so many places. But fentanyl is so much easier to smuggle through because it's so much smaller, right? But the Republicans are going to tell you it's coming in between the ports of entry, which it does. the left, the Democrats are going to say it's coming at the port of entry,
Mm-hmm.
and it does. What that means is we still have an unsecure border that we need to continue to secure, because dangerous drugs are still coming in
Mm-hmm.
through our porous border. It's easy to get through. And as you said, we continue to see record-breaking seizures along our border. And that means that they're successful at getting it through.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a problem.
Thank you. I just wonder, when you catch someone crossing illegally, can you be like, okay, show me all your documents. You can search him up. You can find out if he has anything with him. Do you search him up with a dog or something? I'm trying to imagine the
No,
process.
you're good. So as a Border Patrol agent, yes, when we have the authority as Border Patrol agents, we can do all of that. Because you've entered the country illegally. Now, me as a law enforcement agent, I don't have that same authority. What I do is if I stop somebody here, typically they're not going to have a driver's license. They're not going to have insurance. So if I've stopped them in a vehicle, then I can hold them to have someone come out and see that make sure they're here legally. But again, my experience as a Border Patrol agent, I can ask all those questions. I can't just build a case on it because I don't have that authority. But we have a Border Patrol station here, which makes it very easy for me if I make a stop or if I'm out helping them to detain a group. Well, they come over and they'll ask the official question to make sure that they're either here legally or illegally. But I am limited to what I can do because I don't have that authority. However, Texas has just recently passed a law that's been signed by the governor. There's like a 90-day requirement before it can actually take effect. So here in the next couple of months, it will take effect. That will give us more authority to do that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And let's say you catch someone having something illegal like the fentanyl, and you have the border control agents with you. Can you send them back?
No, we would prosecute them. So if we actually if we caught somebody that was here illegally,
and have
right. Well, if we just caught them here illegally, we'd give them to Border Patrol. If we caught somebody smuggling somebody that was here illegally, then I can prosecute them for smuggling. And I'll tell you that the state has a much more severe consequence than the federal government. But you have to realize that the assistant U.S. attorney for the federal government works for the same president that the Border Patrol does. So prosecution guidelines are going to be lower. But at the state, they're wanting to prosecute more people for smuggling because they're wanting to deter it from happening.
Yeah.
So it's much stricter. And I tell you, the casework is much easier. I've done casework on the federal side and the state side, and I can complete a smuggling case in about an hour on the state side, where at the federal side, it takes you about an 8-hour shift to complete. So it's just because of that bureaucratic process. But if they have drugs, yes, we can prosecute them here at the state level for the narcotics.
So you detain them basically, and they will go through a legal process of.
Yes, ma'am. We'd put them in jail. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, thank you. And also, what is your idea? There's a lot of talk about, of course, mafia, terrorists coming over to the United States. What is your view on this? Is it becoming more dangerous here because United States has many enemies, and we are seeing people coming from all over the world? Do you think this will create some terrorist groups within the United States, or somebody could want to do a revenge or just use the American market because it's so large? What do you think of this?
100%. You're right. Everything you articulated, I agree with. What we've seen in some media sources, of course, we've seen the numbers speak for themselves. The number of people that have been identified on the terrorist watch list. It doesn't mean they're a terrorist. It means that they're associated, or they could be. But there are definitely people coming here to do bad things in America. It doesn't mean they're going to come in today and tomorrow do something bad. They're going to come in, and as you articulated, there may be several that are coming in different locations to regather somewhere else as their cell, and they may not even know each other. And then down the road, carry out an attack of some sort at a certain location. But I certainly know people are coming in to do us harm, and again, we're allowing it. And again, as you mentioned, you've immigrated to the United States, and you have permanent resident, or not resident, you're legally admitted permanent residency. Is that a resident alien? But what other country would allow this kind of stuff to happen? Right? I mean,
You would go to jail most probably.
Correct. And even some other countries, you might even actually be shot. I mean, again, it's not going to happen here. People often say we should be doing this, we should be doing that. But again, that's why we're the greatest country in the world, because we are rule of law and we believe in human rights. So
It almost sounds like it's too late right now. You sort of didn't prevent this from happening, and now you are just will have to try to somehow suppress it. Or I even heard, I think it was the Democratic candidate Phillips, Dean, he said that he would like to incentivize them to register, that he would like to create some kind of incentives which would incentivize the illegal immigrants to register, and they would be all noted. He said, of course, against deportations, but it's just like so many people, and you don't know who they are, you don't know their health records, criminal records. And again, we saw this case in New York, where in the center of Manhattan, for illegal immigrants, they attacked NYPD officer. Right now, they are apparently fleeing to other states, and no one knows where they are, and it probably will go unpunished. I don't know. I assume. And so yeah, I just wonder what's going to happen. Is it going to get worse?
well, and I had a good friend who spoke at an event with me the other day.
Oh, sorry, I can't hear you
Still
now.
there? I'm sorry. I forgot this to put my phone on do not disturb.
Oh
I
no,
had
I
a
did that.
good friend that I spoke with at an event the other night, and he made the comment that he's part of the biggest gang in America, which is law enforcement gang, and there's 880,000 sworn officers throughout America, and we do have the ability. The U.S. government has the ability through the Immigration Nationality Act. It's called 287G, that cross designates local law enforcement as giving them some immigration powers. So if we really wanted to, and it's not to go out there and just get rid of everybody. If there's people that are doing good and they're working, okay, let's deal with those that are criminals, those that have been arrested, because many of them have already been encountered. And if you're arrested, let's get them out of here. If it's something that's egregious enough that warrants it. So there are things in place that we could maybe not get everybody, but we could make things better for sure.
Okay, Sheriff, thank you. If I may, just last question, of course, I have to ask about the convoy, Take Our Border Back. Last numbers I saw were around 300,000 people of supporting. What do you make of that, and how do you see that?
Well, and so I had been in San Antonio the day before, and I was traveling back home where I'm at now, and I went down through Eagle Pass to view it. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I didn't see any semis. It was some Americans there that were supporting the border, and I agree with that. They should have the right to get out and support our Border Patrol agents, and having been a Border Patrol agent and still in the fight, I appreciate seeing that support. But I'm not sure if they accomplished what they wanted to accomplish. But I am grateful that they were able to come out. I'm grateful that there were no conflicts, because I had a lot of media reports where people were asking me my opinion and if I was worried about it. And having been a Border Patrol agent and a law enforcement officer, we're used to having those people on the extreme left or extreme right. What I say are our vigilantes and our faith-based organizations, and we're the ones in the middle balancing those. So I went by. I only spent a little bit of time there, checked it out. That there were some illegals crossing close by. A friend of mine who's a reporter for the Daily Mail, she went and witnessed it, and she asked me about it, and I said it was kind of comical because here illegals are still crossing real close to where this convoy was at, and, but again, that's United States. Hey, that's.
I'm extremely sorry. Just can I one last question? I swear.
Yes,
Thank you.
of course.
I just wonder, you of course put out a statement, but what do you think of this, like the Democrats and Republicans trying to find an agreement together on the border? We saw the legal points out of it that were not very, that they still allowed a lot of illegal immigrants coming through the border. What do you think? Will they manage to find something good for the United States together?
I'm an optimistic person. I always say my glass is half full, but I'm not going to hold my breath waiting on them to come to an agreement. There's going to have to be some compromise somewhere. But I'll tell you, I did see some of the points come out of that Senate bill that they're saying is going to be rejected by the House, and it's a no-go for me as well. You cannot put numbers to an agreement, because if you do, when I was a Border Patrol agent in Nogales, and I may have mentioned this earlier, and if I did, I apologize for repeating, but if I didn't, we had thresholds on marijuana. If you caught anything below 400 or 500 pounds, it wouldn't be prosecuted. So what did the cartels do? They would smuggle 499 pounds to keep it under that threshold to avoid prosecution. Same with illegal aliens. If you had less than 20 in a load, then it wouldn't be prosecuted. So they would do the same thing, just smuggle under that threshold. So no, again, we don't need more money thrown at it. Yes, we can always use more money, but that's not going to solve it. What's going to solve what's going on right now has to be a policy put in place by President Biden.
Okay. Thank you so much. We
You bet.
really appreciate it extremely. It's a big honor. You are doing such an honorable
thank you.
job, Sheriff. Thank you for that.
All righty. You're welcome.